Katoa, nau mai haere mai ki tēnei hui o te kaunihera o Rotorua. Welcome to this meeting of the Rotorua Lakes Council. We do have a number of submitters that will be joining us online and of course some that are in person. So we welcome all of you to this hearing today about our proposed local alcohol policy. Before we get underway though, I will just start us off with a brief karihia. Tūtawa mai I runga, tūtawa mai I raro. Tūtawa mai I roto, tūtawa mai I waho. Kia tau ai te mauri tū, te mauri ora ki te katoa, haumi e, hui e, tai ki. Welcome everybody. It's my pleasure to invite you all here. I'll first of all call for any apologies. Councillor Brown?
A text has come through from Councillor Waru. He won't be making it.
Excellent, thank you. Are you happy to move that, Councillor Brown? Seconded by Councillor O'Brien. I do just note that Councillor Fisher-Wing will be coming in very shortly. So I only have received one apology. So we'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Any against? That's carried. Thank you. Just checking, are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Brown?
Madam Chair, I believe I have a conflict of interest. I'll be listening but won't be participating.
Thank you very much for confirming that. That's fine, thank you. So, first of all, before we get underway, I'll ask for a mover and a seconder that the report hearings for local alcohol policy review be received. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Kaifong, seconded by Councillor Maxwell. All those in favour to receive, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. Now we are expecting to have 5 submitters today. We're going to start off with Greg, then Ian, then Ryan, and then Dean from our Youth Council. Just a reminder that there will be 5 minutes for your submission. To those who will be making a submission online, when you've got perhaps 10 seconds left, I'll just let you know so you can wrap up. But if you do have any time remaining within that 5 minutes, if you're comfortable with it, we'll ask you questions. So we will get underway. I'd now like to invite Greg Hoare from Superliquor to make their submission, and for councillors that is on page 10 of your submissions. So welcome Greg, we can see you online and hopefully you can also see us, and when you're ready the time is yours.
I can indeed, and thank you very much for the opportunity to make a submission first of all. And it's also nice, I think, just to be able to put a face to the name, but also just to pull a couple of things out of my submissions that I'd love to discuss. So, fully respect the 5 minutes. If you don't mind, I might talk to maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and then welcome any questions that you may have of me.
Excellent, thank you, Greg.
So first of all, thanks for the opportunity, and also to Alex for the organisation of this review. I am involved in a lot of the LAPs and also hearings, and the communication level from Alex for this has been first class, so please pass on my thanks for this. So, by the way of introduction, my name is Greg Hoare. I'm the National Operations Manager for Superliquor Holdings. We're a national franchise with a cooperative culture. I've got 5 franchise managers who are geographically based through New Zealand and are responsible for about 40 stores each. Superliquor has 3 Superliquor stores in your great city, and are obviously involved in the Rotorua LAP region. So I just want to pull out a couple of things. I know that you've had a chance to read the submission. Do you have, if I just refer to some numbers in my submission, do you have the hard copy that you can refer to?
Yes, we do, thanks. We're looking at that now.
Fantastic. Okay. First of all, I'd just like to say that as a business, we think LAPs are really good, and however, there is obviously the 6-year time in between renewals, so a lot can happen those times. But as a business, we really like LAPs, and however, I suppose they're only good if the contents of the LAP, we believe, if they can be applied consistently, across each individual license type. And what I mean by that is that for off-premises, obviously, there's off-premises, there's like us, there's clubs, there's remote licenses, there's supermarkets. So all we ask for an LAP, if there's something that is going to be positioned for an LAP it is, for off-premise, it is applied consistently across all those businesses within that. A couple of key points I'd like to pick out is the restriction of further licences. As a business, we don't like that type of restriction. And the main reason for that is that we believe that every licence should be judged on its own merits and the application. And what we're striving for is we've got a very rigid application policy. We only want the best operators. So we also see that putting a cap potentially on licence in the Rotorua area will mean that there's going to be a lot of change potentially over the next 6 years through zoning, growth in certain areas, or even the worst thing that may happen. I actually have a national role, but I reside in Christchurch, and with the earthquakes, that turned our world upside down. And I suppose if you have a natural disaster like that, it does impact. So we don't know what the future holds. So I strongly believe that every application should be judged on its own merit. The second one is maximum hours, and with that, as a business, we're actually open to reduced hours, but do respectfully ask that, as I started, that if hours are placed, for example, on off-premise, then everyone needs to be in that. And so, for example, I don't believe supermarkets, for example, should be allowed to have any different hours, and the reason for that is that I think everyone should be treated the same. And I think if one part of off-premise has longer hours, all it does is just consumer behaviour, and it'll be a detriment to, good business owners. The next thing I'd like to discuss is just the discretionary conditions, the mandatory ones. I suppose with discretionary conditions, we believe as a business, if it's a strong enough a reason for something to be a discretionary condition, then it should be in the LAP. For example, if you want to reduce the hours, it should be in the LAP across all businesses. And we have probably an issue with discretionary conditions from time to time when they can be applied inconsistently. And it's kind of fine, where do you draw the line? So why should one bottle store, for example, have a condition, but another doesn't have to have that? And I think it's a fine line there. However, we do see some really good things that you've suggested in your mandatory conditions. And as a business, we already do things. So things like incident books, things like following CPTED guidelines, we think that's fantastic. A couple of points I'd like to raise, though, is just around the social responsibility policy, and I just request that you may look at that definition and what is required there. Under the social responsibility policy, you've got the word display. So with on-premise, where they have a host responsibility, it's normally a one-page, which is quite clearly outlines the policy. With our social responsibility, it's about 5 pages typed. So it may be a bit of a nonsense to actually display that. First of all, because it's a big area to display, it takes a big area to display, but at the same time, the print's going to be really small. So we endorse having a social responsibility, fully on board that. It's just the display. So whether, for example, you may have a poster that decides that we have a social responsibility, please ask if you'd like to view it, happy with that. But I think the display is going to be quite onerous on where you put that to be able to actually serve the intent of the policy. And then the second one was...
Thank you, Greg. Sorry, just letting you know that...
conditions, restriction of
Greg,
flags and acceptable line colours. What does restriction mean? Does it mean none? Or does it mean sometimes or some? And I just really love some clarity, just to take away the grey area on that.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. Sorry, the time is up. If you can hear me, sorry, Greg. I've given you quite a little bit of extra time, actually. But do you just want to make your final point quite briefly?
Have I used 5 minutes?
Yeah, it goes fast, doesn't it?
Okay, yep, no problem at all. And really, just around the discretionary conditions, what we'd like to see there is basically, with discretionary conditions, we would love them to be ensured that they can be implemented consistently rather than subjectively.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Greg. We appreciate you taking the time to make your submission, especially from your viewpoint of experience. We wish you all the best, and thank you once again.
Thanks again for the update.
All right, councillors, we will go to our next submitter, who is also online. This is Ian Thane, and he represents Foodstuffs North Island. This is submission number 18. Page 18 of your submissions. So just give Ian a moment to connect, and we do welcome our Rotorua District Youth Council, who are also here and will be presenting shortly. Hey Ian, we're just checking if you are good to go. We can see you're connecting to audio at the moment. There we go.
Kia ora. Hopefully you can hear me now.
Kia ora. Yes, we can. Thank you, Ian. So you have 5 minutes for your submission. We do have your written submission in front of us, and I'll let you know when your time is shortly up. If you do wish to take any questions, just leave some time in that 5 minutes. But thank you very much for joining us by Zoom, and we now hand over to you.
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you. I'm here for Foodstuffs North Island Limited. I'm a lawyer external to the business, but I often advise them on alcohol-related matters, including in relation to LAPs. And as I say, thank you very much for the opportunity. Only a few matters really in relation to your proposed changes from your existing LAP. Firstly, in relation to the proposal for a freeze on any new off-licences and then a rebuttable presumption after that, after the 3-year freeze. Foodstuffs' position is that such a policy can have unintended adverse consequences in terms of dissuading people or disincentivising them from investing in your area. A supermarket or grocery store needs, in order to have the full range of products that customers want, it needs to have an off-licence to sell beer and wine. And there is obviously a large investment involved in looking to open a new store in any area or looking to upgrade an existing store or relocate one. And for any of those things, a new licence is required, and any time that the uncertainty as to whether or not a licence can be obtained is increased, that decreases the desire to invest into that area, and sometimes those monies get spent somewhere else. That can be adverse for your city, but also for parts of a city, and that's where the issue that you've got in your proposal around proximity to sensitive sites and so on also can lead to adverse consequences. So what Foodstuffs says is the best way to go about it is to leave plenty of flexibility for a district licensing committee to deal with any application on its own merits and to deal with the particular applicant, the particular type of store it's going to be, who's going to run it, how it's going to be run and so on, without a blanket prohibition on new stores. Such a blanket prohibition can sometimes lead to entrenching bad alcohol operators in place of new, better ones coming in with new licences. In terms of hours, the proposal is to reduce the maximum closing time down to 9 p.m. That won't have an immediate dramatic effect on any of the Foodstuffs stores in your area because they all shut around about then anyway. But again, in terms of flexibility, and particularly given that your city is one to which many tourists, both domestic and international, come, flexibility is good, and so Foodstuffs would advocate for a longer period of time to allow for future growth, also to allow a little bit of a buffer zone for customers who are in the store and trying to complete the transaction as the store comes up to closing time. And this is not just about customer convenience, it's also a safety issue. Customers can become very agitated and sometimes violent if they are prevented from buying what they wanted to buy by a minute or two because they started the transaction before 9 and they couldn't finish it by 9. That sort of thing can put staff in supermarkets at greater risk than is justified. Your proposed changes to the LAP deal with or purport to deal with the time for delivery of remote sold alcohol. That's not something, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on your view, it's not something that the Parliament allows a local council to have a policy on in a local alcohol policy. So the current proposal for that would be ultra vires and therefore shouldn't be there. But it can be dealt with in a different way, and this brings in the discretionary conditions. The only issue that Foodstuffs has with the proposal for discretionary conditions is that it's proposed to call some of them mandatory and some of them optional. And yet, in law, all discretionary conditions listed in a local alcohol policy must be just that, discretionary. The Act will require the District Licensing Committee to have regard to the list that you put in your policy, and then the District Licensing Committee makes its own decision as to whether or not to impose them in their discretion. Using the word mandatory is therefore wrong, misleading, and can therefore lead to confusion and wasted time and so on in hearings, which is not to anyone's advantage. And there's one dot point that comes in the proposed lap after the discretionary conditions. It says remote sale deliveries. Again, the Parliament doesn't allow you to have a policy dictating what is to be stamped on a package to be delivered, but simply removing that heading and putting it as a dot point as one of the discretionary conditions for a District Licensing Committee to consider solves that problem and allows the committees to impose such a condition where they think that that is appropriate, and they might impose different wording required on the packaging if that's appropriate in a particular case. So we suggest improving your local alcohol policy that way.
Thank you very much, Ian. That is time. Did you have any final point that you wish to make?
No, but if there's any question, I guess there might be a moment for a question.
Thank you very much, Ian. We'll wrap it up there as we are a little bit over time for your submission, but we do greatly appreciate your verbal presentation alongside the written submission that we have in front of us. So thank you very much, Ian, and he was representing Foodstuffs North Island.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you. So we now go to our next submitter online. This is Ryan Gray. And we'll just give Ryan a moment to get connected. Kia ora, Ryan.
Kia ora, kia ora, thanks for having me along today.
You're very welcome. So you have 5 minutes to make your submission, and I'll let you know when time is up or just about up.
Cool, thank you. So my submission focuses on a key few themes. One is basically, the overall view is that the policy needs to strike a balance between reducing harm and enabling a thriving hospitality scene, supporting a thriving nighttime economy through good policy, sensible safety measures, and backing good operators. In short, I feel like it stems down to that restricting off licenses is positive, restricting on licenses is bad. Before I get into the future, I just want to go back in time. When I first turned 18, Rotorua's hospitality scene was thriving. A night out could take you across a number of spots. There was Barbarella's, Still Pick and Whistle Today, Kiwi Spirit, Scotty's, The Wall Bar, and more early in the night. Later on, you hit up Grumpy Mole, Lava Bar, you'd meet locals, sometimes tourists, you'd learn a bit about their culture and share some of ours. You know, was it a place where no one ever got into trouble or behaved the way your nan would be proud of? You know, probably not. But on the whole, on licenses managed the clowns who got up to no good, the majority generally have a good time. Friendships were made, relationships that lasted a night or a lifetime formed, jobs and opportunities were created for local workers and businesses. Fast forward to today, when my big nights are thankfully well behind me, I fear some 18-year-olds today don't have the same opportunities that we all once had. Bars and clubs are limited. I hear more people actually more inclined to travel out of town, book an Airbnb for the night instead of staying in Rotorua to enjoy a night out. This is bad for Rotorua, not only for the people of our city who miss out on socialising with their community, but for our economy. The current situation means local businesses and workers do not have as many employment and business options as they did before. In addition, tourists have less reason to stay in Rotorua. And they're more inclined to stay in instead of heading out to meet locals, make memories, learn more about the place we call home, and likely save their money for going out somewhere like Queenstown instead. Well, other reasons have contributed. I feel like changes by council and police have led to this decline in Rotorua's hospice scene and nighttime economy. Importantly, changes proposed with this policy for unlicensed premises could just make the situation worse. In my view, bars shouldn't have to close earlier. The rules need to be consistent across the city to encourage venues to operate as the market allows it. Council should definitely monitor and address issues with bad premises, but the starting point should not be an assumption of bad practices from all. As for off licences, reducing their opening times, ensuring that open near schools and sensitive sites seems sensible. The difference with off licences and on licences is that with an off licence, you can get in, buy $5 of vodka, head home, destroy yourself. You can't do that in an on licence. You know, if someone hasn't purchased the booze they need by 9 o'clock at night, chances are they probably didn't need it in the first place. In addition, I still think some stores should be able to sell single vessels. It might be outside of the council's remit, but an alcohol content to size and price point could be used to determine what can be sold. This kind of ratio would allow cheap alcohol, we would avoid cheap alcohol being sold while still allowing for higher quality and often more expensive alcohol to be sold, like single cans of craft beer, for example. This means less risk of harm while maximum enjoyment for the consumer. Just to conclude, no one can lie and say New Zealand has a good drinking culture, but we all know that prohibition doesn't work. Reducing safe places for people to drink with friends will only lead to more problematic drinking at home and out-of-control parties in the suburbs. The policy needs to allow a nighttime economy to thrive while ensuring unsafe drinking practices and anything that encourages it is addressed. In an age where people are spending more and more time in front of screens and less time interacting with their community in person, we need good council policy which encourages socialising in good times. I hope that you fully consider the policy and remember there is more good than harm that comes from a thriving hospitality scene. Something I know that Councillors Brown and Patterson in particular can attest to given their current and previous careers. Thanks, that's me.
Thank you very much, Ryan. There is 1 minute remaining if anybody has questions. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Tupana Kuta, and for you as the Chair. Thank you, Mr Gray, for your submission and coming before us today. So can I ask you, when you talk about a thriving economic and tourist environment, how many actual nightclubs are open between 2 and 3?
I'm not out between 2 and 3 anymore, so I can't tell you, but I know once upon a time it was 2 to 3, and it was a thriving place. I feel like it's not quite the same as it is today.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any final questions? No. Look, thank you very much, Ryan Gray, for your submission and for your viewpoint that you've shared with us today. We appreciate it.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you. So now we move to our in-person submissions. Up next we have our Rotorua Youth Council. So it is my pleasure to welcome Dean, Justin and Tyler to make their presentation. And youth councillors are welcome to stand near them if you wish. All right, so you would have seen that you have 5 minutes. That 5 minutes does tend to go quite quickly, but we do have a timer here for your interest as well. So whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Cool. Kia ora. Thank you. Firstly, a big thank you and acknowledgement for the opportunity to speak before you today. We are young people who live, learn and grow in Rotorua. We are passionate about creating a community that is safe, healthy and supportive of Toiwi. We acknowledge the Council's efforts to reduce alcohol-related harm in our community and support most of the preferred options outlined in the policy. As the future of Rotorua, we will be the ones most impacted by the changes that you make with the local alcohol policy. Hence, we support reducing off-licence trading hours, additional trading hour restrictions during school times, and a freeze on new off-licences.
The Youth Council raised concerns about the high saturation of on and off licences in areas with many young people. Now, I'm going to assume most of you know the intersection of Old Topol Road and Malfoy Road. Right. So near this area we've got 5 schools: Rotorua Intermediate, Rotorua Girls High School, Rotorua Boys High, John Paul College and Malfoy Primary. At this shopping centre on this corner there are 2 taverns, an off-licence as well as a vape shop. My question is, how does that reflect on us? This situation poses serious risks, including easier access to alcohol for teenagers, which increases the likelihood of underage drinking, with harmful physical, emotional, and social consequences. Additionally, the presence of these stores can attract disruptive crowds, raising the potential for violence and creating an unsafe environment for rangatahi. Walking to school and seeing people drinking reflects upon us, especially. We believe an increase in the 200-metre buffer zone from schools is necessary to address these concerns and protect our youth.
As a collective, we support option 2 of proposal 3 around new off-licence locations in proximity to sensitive and community facilities, with the exception that the Council take into consideration that the following locations be added to the list of sensitive location restrictions: places of worship in marae, youth centres, hospitals, rehabilitation facilities, urupa and cemeteries, meaning that instead of engaging with these communities and consulting with them, Council make the executive decision to cancel out any possibility of any off-licence locations in proximity to these, with, of course, the exception of the 200-metre restriction currently enforced, as we believe this uplifts the mana of both Council as an entity itself and communities concerned in this regard.
We hope that you take us and the voices of Rotorua youth into consideration with this policy. Trends show that youth are making more informed choices around alcohol. This is a shift that we are proud of, and we believe that community-focused policies such as the local alcohol policy can keep this momentum going. However, we acknowledge that we are still affected by alcohol harm. We would like to see the Rotorua Lakes Council support our recommendations on the local alcohol policy. As we discussed earlier, we will bear the load of your choices in the future. So please ask yourself what you want for the future of Rotorua to look like. Ngā mihi nui.
Ngā mihi nui kia koutou hoki. Thank you very much to you all as well. Are you comfortable taking some questions? Yep. Okay. Are there any questions? We have a minute and a half. I do just have one question. You've raised an incredibly good point about the location of where alcohol can be sold in the many schools. Do you believe that signage in particular is too obvious, or is it just the fact that there are those premises and places located in that area? So I suppose when you're walking past, is it seeing signs of alcohol and knowing that it's in there, or is it just the fact that it's there?
So, as someone who goes to the Rotorua Boys High School, my mum works at Malfoy Primary, so I walk that direction every day, so I go past at least one of those taverns and also New Road. So in my opinion, it could be both, but for myself, personally, it is the fact that there is alcohol-related stuff going along those, around that area. But my particular concern is especially for the younger members of the community, especially people that go to Malfoy Primary. You know, we have young kids that are walking past that and also driving past that. So I think to an extent it's both, but it's just especially the fact that it's affecting so many people from different schools. So, I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much, it does. Is there any final question? Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, thank you very much for your presentation. Just regarding New World, which is right smack bang, it would be within 200 metres. Quite often I go in and do my shopping early in the morning and it's full of students. How do you think they need to improve their displays, etc.? Do you think they need to change the way they do things, or do you think students have got the nous to just say, that's it, it's not for me to buy that? You know, do you think there's any temptation there? Does that have to be mitigated in some form?
I'd say it's hard to put into words, but you know, there's sort of that expectation that can be put on kids, you know, seeing their parents drinking and that sort of thing, and then they go into a supermarket and they're like, oh, that's right there, and there's tons of it. And, you know, it's accessible to me. And I suppose there's just that expectation. There's different types of kids, those that like alcohol and those that are negatively impacted with it, but think, oh, you know what, my parents do that, and I see it as a good thing, you know, like they don't understand it, they're not developed in that way. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Look, thank you very much to our Youth Council. We really appreciate your thoughtful submission and also you presenting in person today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, that concludes our hearings. We did have one other, but they haven't turned up, so we'll see if we can give them the opportunity tomorrow, perhaps, if they still wish to make a submission. So we will adjourn today's hearing, and we will be back tomorrow. Councillor Wang, I'll close us with a karakia. Kia whakeiri ai te tapu, kia wāte ai te ara, kia turuki whakataha ai, haumi e, hui e, tai ki e. Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you to those who joined us online.